Hi guys, welcome back to another Drift Cars JP video. Today I'm going to show you how to do a service on a 2008 FN2 Type R. Now this is just going to be a basic service, just an oil and filter change, nothing too sort of special. And what I'm going to show you as well on this video is, if you've never done a track day before, I'm going to show you what to check, what to take with you, what needs to be in what sort of condition, what sort of order before you go and do a track day, and what they're going to check once you turn up and do a track day as well. And like I said, this is just for someone who's never ever done one before, thinking about doing one. There's always a lot of unanswered questions. I always find they don't seem to give you a heap of information on the website wherever track you're going to. So I'll sort of break it down, make it quite simple, what you need to take, what you don't need to take, what you should worry about, what you should check, what order the car should be in, what should be good, what shouldn't, like you have to worry about, that sort of thing. Now, just for the oil change, now what you're going to need for your service is an oil filter claw, 70mm spanner, some oil. These take 5 litres of oil, the K20s, this is the K20 Z4. I use HPR 5 on these, which is 5W40, which is what's recommended for these. This is oil filter they use. I always use genuine stuff. There's the part number if you need to order them for a K20. They're all the same for all the K series motors. They all use this oil filter. You'll need a funnel with a reasonably thin neck, more so because mine's got a strap brace on it, and obviously your oil pan. So we'll jump underneath and we'll let this oil drain. Because I'm draining it cold, I've had the car sitting here overnight in the garage. I haven't driven it. I always like loosen off the oil cap before I do anything, and I also just pull up the dipstick, let it just sort of sit there so you know to check it later on. I'm also going to do a thermostat today. The factory one of mine's leaking, so I've ordered a low temp spoon thermostat, you can see there on the side. This comes from Japan. It's basically a standard replacement. It's nothing special. It does have a slightly cooler opening temp, which it doesn't state what it is. I don't know if it says it on it anywhere, but I doubt it. But I'd say it'd probably be like 20 degrees lower than what the factory opening temperature is. So anyway, we're going to be replacing that because mine's just leaking slightly from this seal, which after a bit of time they're probably a good thing to replace anyway. So we're going to obviously drain the coolant to do that as well. But like I said, I'm draining the oil cold. If you haven't driven the car at all and it's sat overnight, all the oil's dropped to the bottom of the pan anyway, but you need to give it a lot of time to drain. So I'll let this drain for probably 4 or 5 hours. I'm not in a rush today. I'm actually going to dump the oil now and then go off and do some other stuff, and I'll finish the video later on today. So I'll let it drain for probably 4 or 5 hours. It's about midday here in Australia at the moment. So we'll jump underneath here. I'll show you. Mine's already got the cover off underneath, so we don't need to remove that, but most are all going to have this plastic tray underneath. I'm going to try and refit my plastic tray, but I don't think it's going to fit with these ultra racing bracing bars, and also with my brake ducting they're not going to fit either. But anyway, so we'll drop this oil. It's probably easier on these first to actually drop and undo your oil filter, because I'll show you underneath here, the oil filter sits up the back here. You can see it there, up above the CV shaft there. So it's actually probably easier before you drain your sump, which is just here in front of you, which is just there. So it's easier for you to get to that first, let that drain over there, and then you can undo the sump plug at the same time. Now I've got an oil filter adapter on mine, so they're a little bit tight to get to. This is why you'll need an oil filter claw to get in and up there. So mine's not that overly tight, which is good. I'll drop that down. You only need to loosen this off like 2 or 3 turns, just enough for it to, once it starts running. And it'll probably, because it's cold, it'll take a while for it to come down. So you can just see it's just starting to drain through there. So once it gets to that point, just leave that and then come over here to your sump plug. We'll do all this one-handed. This is your 70mm here. So you better just crack it. and that's it. And then we'll let that drain, like I said, for probably a good 3 or 4 hours. If you do it hot, which is fine, you know, you do it hot, you're going to expect it's obviously going to be pretty hot on your hands once it comes out. But once you do it hot, you only need to let it drain for probably 5-10 minutes, and once it sort of drops to a drip, then you probably find to do it up. You're never going to always get everything out of the sump. Now if you look at this sump, the way it's designed here, you've got a gap through here, so oil's always going to still remain in the engine, because this is where your oil low level signal is, in here. So you're always going to have a little bit of oil left over. You're never going to be able to ever drain it all out. That's just how most vehicles are. Anyway, so we'll let that drain, and we'll come back and we'll do some other stuff later. Now I've drained most of the coolant out of the radiator because I want to reuse this because it's brand new. Now if you can see up here, this is your thermostat in this housing here. So you've got 3 10mm, one up the back here, and these 2 here. And then you want to pop this hose off first, because this top part's actually, the wiring's actually clipped into the thermostat housing. I'll undo all 3 to get it off first. We'll take that off first and get that out of the way before we try and take that clip off. Now to do those type of hose clamps, you really need a tool like this. What it is, it's a locking tool that as you pull on there, it pulls these 2 little slides together here, and then it locks together, so it holds the actual hose clamp for you to undo it. So I won't show you getting it off because it's going to be a bit hard to hold the camera and do it all at the same time, but we'll get that off and we'll undo those bolts. Okay, so we've got the old thermostat out. There's probably not much difference between the factory Honda one and the spoon one. We'll have a look to see what is actually different on them. I'll be interested to know what you pay your $170 for, but it's same part number. That's got CKR in it, that's got OKU, whatever that means, and that's basically it. It doesn't really look much different at all. So anyway, I'll just say, like, it's probably come from the factory and it's just been given a different opening point for the temperature. So we'll get that one in, and then we can start filling it back up and get the other rest of the jobs done. Now with refitting these, just remember the housing is only into plastic on this, so you've got to be a bit careful with doing them up. You don't need to do them up over tight sort of thing, so you don't want to strip out the actual back housing on the thing. So okay, I've had this draining for pretty much all day because I've had other things to do, and yeah, I've just sort of left it. So everything's pretty much drained out. It's not even dripping anymore. So it's a good time to replace your sun plug washer. I don't replace it because I service the thing quite often, so I'll service this now and I'll do a track day next week and I'll service it straight after. But it's a good practice to always replace your sun plug washer because they're only cheap. They only cost you probably like $1 to replace one. So it's always good to replace that. Now when doing up your sun plug, you don't need to go crazy tight on it. You've got to remember it's only holding oil and it's in the alloy, so just do it up tight and give it a little bit of a tap like that, and that's enough. Don't go hanging off it or anything like that, because being an alloy sump, you'll end up actually stripping it out on the inside here. So we'll just drop our oil filter out as well while we're in here. This has been draining the whole time. I haven't actually dropped it down yet because I've been off playing with the kids and entertaining them. So drop the oil filter off. Pretty much drained out anyway. My oil is not all that dirty because I don't drive it that much in between events. So you just give it a good clean up in here, just so you don't get oil dripping off everywhere once you actually start the car, because it drips right across the actual CV boot here. Makes a little bit of a mess. Now whenever you take your oil filter off, make sure you note whether the seals come off with the oil filter as well, because if that seal's stuck up on your actual housing, the oil filter housing, you'll get a leak. So just make sure that always comes off. They generally always do, but some cars they don't. If you've got a cheaper brand of oil filter, they sometimes get stuck. Now Honda ones are really good because the oil filter comes completely sealed, which is great. So all you need to do is peel that off. Now these are, this seal on these are pre-greased. As you can sort of see there, they've already been greased up, so you don't need to put a bead of oil around it or anything like that. So you can just throw that on. Now, same as with your sump plug, I only need to do these up by hand. You don't need to go crazy on them or anything like that, or put a tool on them, but I like to do them as tight as I can do it by hand, like that, and that's plenty enough. So we'll get some other stuff done now. Now, I didn't actually video it, but I've done the thermostat housing up there, and I also did the hose just behind it there. I don't know if you can see it there. I did the upper hose out of the thermostat housing. Now, I didn't video that because if I did, YouTube would have demonetized my channel due to the amount of swearing involved to get to it, because the actual hose comes up just inside here underneath the inlet manifold. It's very hard to see, but I like to replace all my hoses once if I'm going to track the car, so it's just me being fussy. So I put a genuine hose on there, but yeah, what a pain that was to do that. So we'll fill the oil up while we're here. We'll get that done. It only takes 5 litres. You don't even really need to measure it on these. It's great because they take 5 litres on the dot, so you can just literally fill it up and check your dipstick once after you start it, and that's it. Now we've got that filled up. Like I said, they take bang on 5 litres. Start the engine, run it for about 30 seconds. I'm not going to show it in this video because it just takes a little bit of extra time. Start it, run it for 30 seconds till the oil light's off on the dash. Turn it off, check the level again, just in case yours takes a little bit more than some others, but most of them all take, like I said, bang on 5 litres. So what we're going to do now, I'll get the wheels off and I'll show you what to check inside the wheels with your brakes and stuff like that. And we're going to swap the tyres around actually, because these are not what I'm going to be using on the track. I'm going to be using these work wheels with these Bridgestone tyres. Now they're an alright tyre for doing a track day. I'd normally run a semi-slick, but I'm going to wait till these are worn out first. They've still got a fair bit of tread on them, so hopefully this track day that I do next week might wear them out, then I can get some semi-slicks for them. But I sort of don't believe in just replacing them for no real reason. And the track day I'm going to do, it's more for just a test day anyway. It's just to shake the car down, make sure everything works and does what it wants to do, or what I want it to do. So while you've got everything out, it's a good sort of time. Check your coolant level, check your brake fluid. Make sure your brake fluid's at the high level. If it's down really low on yours, you probably might need pads. Brake master cylinder is very unlikely to have a leak, so if the fluid's down, don't just top it up. Generally you need brake pads front or rear, so you can just, once you actually put the new pads in, the fluid level will come back up on it. So same thing, check your clutch master cylinder as well. Sometimes they do slightly leak a little bit on the slave cylinder end, so it's a good time just to top that up. Check your belt as well. Make sure your drive belt here hasn't got any cracks or anything like that in the drive belt. You don't normally see it on this side of the belt. It's always on the inside of the belt that you'll see the cracks, and if it's got cracks in it, it needs to be replaced. Now I've got an AC delete on this. I haven't actually got air conditioning on mine, so mine's got a brand new belt on it. And that's about it up the top that you really need to check. There's not much else apart from your air filter, which obviously I've got a pod filter on mine. If you've got a normal standard airbox, you want to pull the filter out and give that a check over. If you're planning on doing a track day and you haven't done the gearbox fluid for a while, it's a good time to actually do it. And for a track day, it's always good to put a little bit of the smooth shift in your gearbox as well, which is, I'll got some of it up on my shelf up here. It's always good to run a little bit of this in your manual gearbox if you're going to do a track day. You're not going to be too harsh on the gearbox, but it just helps with making nicer shifts. So anyway, so we'll get these wheels off. I'll get the back jacked up, and then we're going to have a look over and I'll show you what they're going to check on your track day, what you should wear, what you should bring with you as spare parts, and etc. sort of thing. So we'll get these wheels off. Now once you get your wheel off, you want to just make sure there's no like extra scoring on the disc or a huge lip on the end of the disc as well. This car we can't obviously check whether your shocks are leaking because they're brand new, but if you see anything sort of wet around this sort of area on your shocks or up the top there, that indicates your shocks are worn out. And you can kind of do a bounce test on them too. So while we're here, you want to check your brake lines. Mine's got braided brake lines on it. You just want to make sure there's no splits in the hose. Check your ABS sensor line, make sure that's alright. Mine's actually hanging off, it needs to be reattached up there. Now when you check your brake pads, I'll just grab a torch. Okay, so when you see in there, let's see if we can get this torch in there. So you want to make sure the pads look even on both sides. So we'll do that there. So you want to be able to see the outer pad. It's a bit hard to see on this. You probably have to look sort of through this side here. You just want to make sure both pads are even. If they're wearing unevenly, like one pad on the outside is really worn out, that means these slides here are seized and you need to pull them out and grease them up. But if they're nice and even like that, which mine are, mine's all been greased up and got new pads in it, new fluid and all that sort of stuff, that means your brake pads are all fine. You don't need to sort of do anything with them. And that's about all you need to check under here. You check your CV boots, make sure your CV boots aren't split, the outer and the inner one, make sure they're all good. It's a good time just to grab the tie rod ends here for your sway bar. Just make sure they're nice and tight, they're not loose and flopping around or anything like that. And that's about all you really need to check under here. So we'll get the wheel back on and we'll keep going. Now that pretty much wraps up the service part. I've still got a few little jobs to do. I've got to cut and put this Mishimoto coolant temp sensor in. I'm not going to show all that stuff. That's pretty sort of standard what I'm going to be doing there, and then just refill the radiator. But what I was going to talk about is what you need to have and check and take with you on a track day. Now, if you've never done a track day before, I've done a fair few track days plus super sprints and actual competition events. Now, the most basic first off thing you need is a decent helmet. That's the first thing they're going to check when you turn up to an event. Make sure your helmet's got the ticks on the back, Australian standard ticks. Make sure the helmet's in good condition too. It doesn't look like it's been scraped around the bush and thrown off every sort of thing onto rocks and stuff like that. So they will check that. They will make sure your strap's good. And you don't have to have a full face. You can have a full face or an open face. Generally, a dirt bike helmet's not really acceptable. So anything that's a sort of motorbike road helmet and stuff like that, that's pretty much fine to use. Interior wise in your car, the main thing they're going to check, which I'll just show you on the passenger seat belt rather than climbing over there, is your seat belt. You're going to make sure it's not frayed or anything like that. They'll check that it locks and make sure it locks and stays locked. They'll also plug it into your buckle and it needs to go in the first click like that, and then they'll check that. If your buckle takes like multiple clicks, which some cars do to get it to click in, they won't pass that. Obviously they're not going to check your passenger side, they're more concerned about your actual driver side. So that's one thing that they'll definitely check. Whatever type of seat you have, they're not really concerned as long as it's like an ADR approved seat, but I've never been checked. I've had other Bride replicas in other cars and never really worried about that. What they will check is they will pump your brake pedal, make sure you haven't got a spongy brake pedal. They may grab your steering just to make sure the steering's not all loose and worn out on the rack or anything like that. A good thing to have, which is not necessary, is a fire extinguisher. If you're going to put one in, make sure it's either bolted through the floor or mounted on a proper bracket. Don't mount it in your plastics or anything like that. They'll actually ask you to remove it. And if you're going to put one in, you need to put one in that's got these mounts. So it's got a mount there, it's got to have another one around the neck like that, and it's got to have a secondary strapper through the center there. Now, you can have ones which have got two straps here, but it must also have the mount around the neck of the bottle as well. So that's another thing that you've got to have. Now another thing they're going to check is your battery. They're going to make sure your battery is secure. That's got a proper clamp across the top of it. Make sure your battery lines are secure and, as well. So that's what they're going to check too. Make sure the battery's not flopping around. So if you haven't got a proper battery mount, obviously mine's in the back, most cars are in the front, they'll knock you back for a track day as well. Back seats, all that sort of stuff, anything you want to remove is fine. They're not interested in anything like that. They're more interested with the driver's side of the car and safety things as well. Now another thing they're going to check is your bonnet catch. You must have your secondary bonnet catch. That's going to be one thing they're going to knock you back for. It's going to have to locate into that one, but if the bonnet actually pops up, you need to have your secondary catch installed, or a set of bonnet pins, as well as the bonnet catch as well. So that's another thing that they'll knock you back on if you don't have that. Engine bay, the main thing they're concerned is it doesn't have any oil leaks, it's not dripping coolant or anything like that. So before any track day, it's good to make sure your coolant hoses are all good anyway. Don't have your overflow bottle near the top on a track day, because every time you come in, there'll be coolant sprayed all through the engine bay, because you'd be surprised that you can drive on the street and you'll never get overflow spillage. But when you're on a track, the fluids just going back, forth, and it ends up coming up out the top, and it'll end up all over here. So you don't be concerned if you do pull up after your first session and you'll find a bit of coolant all through here. It's most likely from your overflow. Now another thing they'll check is just, they don't care about paint condition or anything like that, but if your bodywork's loose, like if you've got bits that are hanging off here, like your bars like sitting off away from there, just cable tie them up. That's one of the things they'll come around and check your car, just to make sure your car looks like it's in pretty decent sort of roadworthy condition. So they don't want stuff that's hanging off. It's sort of like if it's a rear bar or something like that hanging off here, just cable tie it up, or put a screw in it or something like that. But they will knock you back if you've got parts that look like they're going to fall off halfway around the track. Another thing to check, which a lot of people don't think about, before you go and do your track day, depending on what your tyres are like, if you've got directional tyres, you're kind of limited to which side of the car you put them on. You always want to put your best tyre on the front and put your worst tyre on the back. Now, if you've got tyres that are non-directional, have a think about which direction the track is. Now, most tracks in Australia are always clockwise, so your front right wheel, your front left wheel on this side is going to cop the most abuse. So you want to put your best tyre on your front right, whether it's a rear-wheel drive car or not. Your front right, if it's a clockwise track, it's always going to cop the most abuse. So I always tend to put the best tyre I have on the front right, and if you get the opportunity throughout the day and you're going pretty hard, swap them two back and front. Or if you have non-directional tyres like these are just got outside and inside, swap them around if you get the chance while you're there, just to prolong your tyre life, because this tyre will cop a hiding. It'll get hotter than all the other tyres, and it will start to delaminate quicker than all the other ones if you're going hard on the track. So that's a good sort of thing to do. Now, one thing to consider before you do a track day is what pads you're running in the front. The rears for a front wheel drive car like this doesn't really matter. You can pretty much just run a set of standard pads in the rear. I've got Intimate SR pads in the rear, so they're a little bit better than the stock standard pad. Now on the front, I'm running Intimate SRs as well, which are a 0 degrees to 600 degrees pad. Now, I ran these on my previous Honda Integra, which you can probably see in some of my other videos. Now, they were fine on that, but we might find on the day that these actually aren't good enough. Now, with your pad choice, for a lightweight car, anything from 0 to 600 or from 200 to 800 degree pad's going to be fine. Depending on what type of event you're going to do, if you're just doing a track day, get a 0 to 600 degree pad. It'll probably last 5 or 6 laps before it'll start to have a little bit of fade start to come into it. But for a street pad, they're pretty good. Like, you'll get good pad feel as soon as you stop the car when they're cold. Whereas if you buy a pad that's 200 degrees to 800 degrees, you'll get quite a vague pedal feel on the street, which is not what you want if it's your everyday driver. But these are a good pad. You can throw them in, do probably 2 track days on these before you wear them out. That's averaging like 50 or 60 laps, and yeah, for the price that you pay for them, they're pretty good. Now, tyres for a track day, as long as they're not completely worn out, they won't knock you back. Obviously, a semi-slicks, you're going to get better lap times. With a street tyre, if you're planning to drive to and from the track like I am, a street tyre is fine. I will upgrade these to probably like a Federal RSR or something like that later on, once these are worn out. But pretty much anything for your track day is going to be fine. If you go for a bit more of a road tyre, like what I've got on my street wheels here, these will squeal all over the track and make a horrible amount of noise on the track, because these tread blocks will all move as you're going around the track. They actually will twist on the tyre, and that's what gives you the squeal noise. Whereas if you go for something like what's on here, or a semi-slick, they're a lot larger tread pattern, a lot thicker blocks on the tyre, so there's going to be a lot less movement on those as you're going around the track. These still aren't going to be the best on the track, but they'll do for a bit of a test day. Like I'm only going there just to test the car, just to see what it'll do under heavy braking, whether it'll spin round or what it'll do, understeer, oversteer. That's basically what I'm going there to check. And once we've just changed oil, after I do a track day, I'll change oil again. It's just one of those things. I always change the oil before a track day, and then always I change it straight after a track day as well, because the oil doing 70 laps on a track is basically doing what you've done in like 10,000 kilometers. So it's something I want to do sort of as soon as I get back from a track day, or even if I don't drive the car for another week, but you want to change it all. Gearbox oil, not so much. You can probably go 2 or 3 track days before changing your oil, depending on how fussy you are. But engine oil, it's your number one thing. It's the cheapest thing to replace. Get home, change your oil, and you get a lot more days out of it. Now, what I take with me on a track day is I kind of take this little box with me. What I've got with me, I've got a set of spare spark plugs, which are these old ones that I've previously replaced in the car. I've got a full socket and spanner set of jumper leads, spare set of old radiator hoses that are for the car. I take a 36mm socket, which is for the front CVs, just in case I break a CV and I have to try and get one and replace one. I always take a spare drive belt with me. This is brand new. And that's about it. A bunch of gloves and rags and stuff like that. I always do chuck in some of that steel wheel radiator putty just in case you get really stuck. I've also got in here, I've got a breaker bar in here just for doing up wheel nuts, lever bar, some spare heater hose, some spare wiper blades as well. Not that I've ever really had to get around to using them. And that's about all I take. I take some rags and some chamois and stuff like that, just to sort of clean the windscreen and stuff like that. I've also got a spare exhaust hanger, just in case one falls off halfway around the track. And if your car's exhaust annoys you, take a set of earplugs with you, because the helmet blocks out a heap of noise, but sometimes your car just drives you nuts if you're going hard all day. Now, what I also take is generally I just take the scissor jack with me, which is just your factory scissor jack. When you're there, take all this out of your car. You don't want anything hanging around in your car. You don't want like loose towels, like any of these straps or anything like that. Anything that's loose, like the windshield visor and stuff like that. Take everything out of the car when you get to the track. Your spare wheel, the whole lot. And same as that with your jack and your wheel brace and stuff like that. And another thing I always take 2 spare wheels, depending on what size wheels you have. Now these are 18s, the wheels that I'm running on the car for the track day are 17s, but I'll take 2 with me. Just in case I go off and bend a wheel, you need to be able to put a set of the same wheels on the front. Now it'll stuff up your ABS a little bit because you're running 18s on the front, 17s on the back, but at least it will keep you on the track for a little bit longer, and it will get you home if you do break a wheel. So at least you can put 2 of the same wheels on the front. So that's what I always take with me, 2 of them, and my toolkit. You need to take plenty of water with you. I've got a little list up here on my wall, which I'll put up on the screen in a minute, of just all the stuff that I do take with me, just so you've got a little bit of a rough idea what to take. Now, another thing that I don't sort of mention too much of is your clothing to wear on the day. Now, you've got to wear cotton. If you're going to wear a long sleeve shirt, which I find is the best because you get hot when you're hammering around on track, is long sleeve cotton shirt. Make sure it's 100% cotton, nothing synthetic. A pair of pants, they can be jeans, it doesn't matter, and a pair of comfortable shoes. Just something that I always wear, a shoe that's sort of got a thin sole, so I can sort of feel the car a little bit more while I'm on the track, so you can sort of get a bit more of a better feel with under braking. That's about all like you really need to do clothes wise. Like you don't sort of need anything sort of special or race suit or gloves, but that's personal preference. If you want to wear gloves and stuff like that, that's completely up to you. Now, when you arrive at the track day, you obviously got to go sign on. You need your driver's license with you. You don't need anything else. You don't need rego papers for the car or anything like that, because everything can be checked online these days. And if you've driven there, they're pretty confident that your car's registered anyway. If it's your first time to enter, always enter in the beginner class if you've never done a track day before, because if you're too fast for the class that you're in, they'll always move you up. They'll move you up to the intermediate or up to the advanced class, depending on how fast your car is and how good your driver skill is. But you'll always get a very big mix of people at a track day. You'll find there'll be people going a bit over the top, overtaking people on the corners when they're not supposed to, because all track days you're not allowed to overtake under braking or into a corner. You're only allowed to overtake under a straight. But you'll always find there'll be somebody out there that'll do exactly what they're told not to do. People just sort of get it all excited while they're out there racing and start to sort of forget about the rules and what you're supposed to do and what not supposed to do while you're on the track. Always take a full tank of fuel with you. You'd be surprised how much fuel you go through on a track day. If your car's pretty heavy on juice, take an extra 20 litres with you, which is what I always do anyway, because I generally like to fill up at home before I leave and then drive to the track day, just so I drop 10 litres or so in the fuel tank before I get there, because you don't want to have a completely full tank of fuel, because you'll find it'll actually start to push out of the car as you're going around the corners and stuff like that. Make sure a few other little things which I like to do is make sure your front windscreen's clean. If you're surprised, like after a day, you don't want to be running with your aircon on while you're fanging around the track, and your windscreen will start to fog up if you've got a dirty windscreen. So always give that a good clean. Make sure your car looks obviously presentable before you turn up to the day. Everyone's always got nice cars out there, so why not make yours look a little bit better? And that's about it. So yeah, apart from, with the oil change, you just need to take it for a drive, come back, check for leaks. For those that have asked, I've got the factory under tray sitting up the top there, but with the ultra racing bars, they don't fit, and also with my brake ducting, I'd have to cut all the insides out of it as well. So unfortunately, yeah, they don't fit with the ultra racing bracing underneath the car. If I get real keen, I might have a look at sort of cutting parts away on it and actually trying to get the thing to fit, but at the moment I'm not too concerned. So that's it. So thanks heaps for watching. Thanks for the support on the channel. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. Like the video if you've liked what I've done. Hopefully it helps you. I'm trying to sort of help people get into track days, because I think they're a really good thing. Especially with police these days, it's pretty hard to sort of do much on the streets. And you get out there and you can go hard all day, drive as fast as you want, do, not burnouts, but you can sort of get a little bit loose in the corners and stuff like that. And yeah, really enjoy yourself without having to worry about oncoming traffic or pedestrians or anything like that. And they're cheap. The track day I'm doing next week, which is at Luddenham, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, which is about sort of an hour west of Sydney. It's $200 for a full day. Starts at 9, goes to 4:30, 15-minute sessions, and you'll probably find, like, if you get out into every session, get out early, you probably end up doing like 60 to 70 laps for the day. So I'm going to do a video on the track day, which is a bit more of a how-to, and show you exactly how a track day sort of operates here in Australia. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. And yeah, it won't be heaps. I'll do a fair bit of seat time. I've got a couple of mates going in their cars as well, and I'll try and get a little bit of footage from them as well. So anyway, thanks heaps for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers. See ya.